All right, guys. So I'll be real with y'all. It's been so long since I painted anything on this piece right here. You know what I'm saying? Since this piece right here. So, but I wanted to, as I said, I wanted to make a tutorial that is full and that is complete and that has, enough pieces in it to, if you wanted to create, go from, sketch or rough or blockouts to a somewhat final image with, a few finishing touches and things like that, you can quite easily. So that's what I'll be showing you today. I'll be showing you how to get kind of this guy here and this guy over here who's blurred out. These two kind of like mechs that are about to go fight the ops that are over here off camera. We're going to take these guys and we're going to go to the finish. So we're going to take them from this stage now and we're going to push it and try and get it to a place, or not try, we're going to get it to a place where it's presentable a little bit more than it is now. Now it's very presentable as an idea, but it's not presentable as, okay, this is making sense in terms of a concept, because there's no action, there's no drama, there's not really any mood. It's quite default, right? Mood is a big part of this stuff, setting the tone, and a lot of that stuff is a big part of this stuff. So let's get into it. So number one, what I want to establish, sometimes it's nice to think about our goals. So what I want to do here, I have a few goals for this piece. So right here, we're going to put goals. Yeah. So the first goal is lighting. Yeah. We need to make the lighting better. The lighting is not very good, right? So we need to look at kind of like where the lighting's coming from, right? I want there to be a rim light here. So I want there to be light hitting these parts and kind of like blasting the machine, and I'm going to get rid of that goals because I wrote it on the wrong layer. But yeah, so first goal, goals lighting. I'm not even going to write them because I don't want to destroy the time-lapse file afterwards. So second goal is going to be, dynamic things happening. So if you look here, these are just copy and paste of each other, right? Now, what I want to do is take this hand and probably turn it into a gun or something like that, right? Something where there's a dynamic thing going on that separates these two in terms of what they actually are, because right now they're exactly the same thing, just with different colorways, right? He's got this extended eye, which is cool, but that's about it that separates them. And then the last thing is we want to add FX. So just put FX, right? FX just means effects. It just means visual effects, things to make the image better, and possibly some background stuff, but that's all in effects to me. But we will just put BG as well, right? Obviously, if you look at this canvas, there's not that much kind of space for background aspects. There just really isn't that much. There is a background area, but it isn't big enough. The canvas itself is dominated composition-wise by these figures. So it's a situation where we're going to have to go in and figure that out in terms of what we're going to do with it, whether it be dusty buildings, whether it be clouds and smoke, whether it be energy, but we're going to figure that out, and we're going to pretty much not wing it, but we've kind of winged this whole piece. So we're going to probably wing it. All right. So is everybody ready? Set, go. So first of all, I'm on the same layer right here, the main character layer. And I want to adjust this hand, make it into something that's not a hand. So let's go in and erase. So recently I've been I haven't been doing that much drawing and painting. I've been slacking really. I've been kept telling myself, I keep telling myself, yo, need to do more stuff in the sketchbook. Need to do more stuff with traditional mediums. But a bulk of what I do most of the time is graphic design, photography, and video. So I've been doing so much photography and video that I haven't had that much like time and energy to do a lot of drawing. I've been doing some stuff here and there. Been doing some One Piece stuff. I've been trying to get through the entire cast of One Piece. That's kind of been a goal of mine, to create like a One Piece set of images, like loads of them, like make one a week for a year or something. I'm not really winning in that regard, the one a week thing, but I think I've done 4 or 5 right now, pretty decent quality One Piece images. Maybe my next kind of like art tutorial will be how to draw one of them. So it's something that's a little bit more recognizable, because I've noticed things that are more recognizable get more views because people care about things that they know, right? Whereas this could literally, all I could really type for this is, concept art tutorial or something like that. It's not really anything that people know other than the idea of what it is and how it is that I'm going around painting this. So just like that, we've sorted it out. The hands are gone. Now, there are little things we can do. Now, I love to use the lasso tool in my process. So what I'm going to do is just kind of make some lasso selections. And my lasso is set to fill with colour. So even if it seems a bit weird, I'll be filling in my lasso selections to make shapes. And it just works like a dream sometimes. Now, right here, we're going to make a clipping mask layer. We're going to clip this layer to this one. And we're going to set this layer right here to, there's a few options we can do. We can do overlay, or we can do hard light. I'm going to do hard light, and I want to get we'll stick with this brush. And we will get a grey colour, right? Grey. And we'll just paint over this hand. Now, the reason I use hard light, because hard light for me is a strange, random type painting style. So I just used a medium grey and it didn't create any grey. But when I used a lighter grey, it was lighter. So what I want to do is, the reason I used hard light is because this is what I actually wanted to do. I wanted to make the hands a little bit more grey and a little bit darker, because I wanted to make the hands separate from the main body forms, so the hand seems like its own shape, right? And that was the whole goal of this entire kind of like using hard light to separate the hand, from the body itself. Because even like you look at this mech, it's cool, but the mech itself is a strange colour. It's like the mech's in some sort of camo. Now, I don't mind it, it's interesting, but you don't get that many brown mechs because you don't really get that many brown metals, right? So I'm thinking, at some point, am I going to have to change that brown to something else? Who knows? But right now, we can experiment with it. And go into our hue saturation settings. Now, on Photoshop, you can hue saturation like the entire like areas. So you could go, okay, I don't like it to be this color, I want it this color, right? See, this is cooler because it's like it's golden, right? And I do like this. Then we can bump the saturation a bit, and it kind of gets more into what I like, to be fair. And then there's a little bit more contrast with the background. So maybe I keep that. So there's how it was, there's how it is, there's how it was, there's how it is. Now, the only reason I changed those colors is because I have this thing about golden robots. So I'm probably going to keep this now. It might upset a lot of people, but I'm probably going to keep this the way it is now, just because I like golden robots. Now, we've kind of accomplished some of our goals already, quickly and efficiently. We've accomplished those goals. I'm going to merge down these layers, the hard light layer, and then I'm going to go into just kind of getting a thicker brush and doing some painting with a thicker brush. Now, Procreate, unlike Photoshop, has an advantage of having being able to use blender brushes that are just part of the brush tool, aside from it being a separate tool. Because in Photoshop there is a blender brush, but it's a separate tool and it doesn't work that well. The blender brushes in Procreate work decently well. They work, kind of like half as good as the ones in Clip Studio Paint or Corel Painter or whatever you want to, reference about blending. But they are all kind of part of your overall brush set. So you don't have to compromise anything by using a different brush that works a little bit differently. Whereas in Photoshop, you absolutely do. It's a whole kind of area of the brush set that works differently, and it doesn't work the way kind of like the normal brushes work. So it kind of separates itself in that regard. And it's had a blender brush for years that not that many people use, because it is quite an awkward kind of like tool to use in comparison. Now, it's always good, in my opinion, to, if you've got two mechs that you've copy and pasted, to kind of make them look a little bit different from each other if you can. However that is manifested, but it's always good to do that. Obviously, this one in the background is blurry, so it doesn't matter, but at the same time, it's still good to have that separation going on. So where people look at it, they'll be able to say, okay, one's different from the other and such, and, as goes the law. Now, all I'm doing now is I'm adding like little bits of rendering, little kind of blacks, like extra blacks, extra shapes, extra crevices. Nothing major. What I will do though is I'll jump ahead, because I like to add ambient occlusion. So go straight in and make another clipping mask to this layer. And I'm going to set this to, you could do overlay, you could do multiply, we're going to do overlay. And we have a black selected, right? We're going to go a little bit up from black and maybe use a color, like a darker brown. And we're going to start doing some shadow stuff. That's all we're doing, straight in. We're just doing shadow stuff, right? The reason we're using this brush is because this brush can blend. And with shadows, you kind of want the option to be able to blend the shadows. You don't want them always to be totally hard. You want some of them to be blendable. If I rush ahead, it's just because I've done like rendering stuff for years, and to be honest, it's just natural at this point to kind of render things a certain way. So I'm not trying to say it's the right way, but I'm saying I have a certain way of how I go about rendering that is pretty much ingrained in my process at this point. And I've had to come to terms with that. It's the strange thing about a lot of this stuff is like artistically, it's quite abstract. A lot of the stuff we do artistically is like an abstract concept, but it works. It's like music. It's like a lot of it's rhythmic, and it's not just technical. It can be rhythmic. Okay, so let's have a look at the difference. Before, after, before, after. So, it has a little bit more edge, and that's all we was kind of looking for. We weren't looking to go crazy. We was looking to give it a little bit more edge. Now, what I will do is I'll go in with a soft brush, and just kind of just pad it a little bit on the edges. Those big kind of sweeping strokes can help a lot. It's strange how much they just help, especially with hard surface stuff, like when you're doing like metals and stuff like this, because this is like metal, hard surface kind of. It just helps. That's why when you go back and you watch like Gundam Wing, you realize how much like soft brushes they used for a lot of the scenes to make the Gundams look cooler. And I'm only saying this because I watch Gundam Wing all the time. I'm like a big fan. Because when I was a kid, I was bad. And to my to my embarrassment now as a grown-up, my mum used to have to, not to get me under control, but to discipline me to a degree. She used to be like, yeah, I cut the cable off. So I'd go to school, come back. And when I say I was bad, I was more of a smart ass, but at the same time, at school, I didn't really respect it, so I didn't apply myself, right? So, and I still got good grades in the end, Yeah, I just want that to be known. But I was a smart ass. So she ended up cutting off the cable a few times, right? Now remember, people, we have been using an overlay layer for this, right? The reason we've been using an overlay layer, right, is because an overlay layer doesn't just have to darken, it can brighten. So if you want to go in now and add some like highlights, you very much can. So that was one of the reasons I said we'll use an overlay, because you use an overlay, you can do highlights and shadows on the same layer. And it helps you kind of overall with, what it is you're trying to do, especially mechanically, right? Now, remember, our goal here is to create concept art. Our goal isn't to create the most amazing kind of like concepts of a giant robot ever. Our goal is to create a piece of concept art that a 3D artist could look at and say, okay, that's cool. Or a director could look at and say, okay, I see the concept. I see what you're trying to get at, artist. And remember that it's not about trying to create the maddest piece of art you've ever seen. That's really not what I'm doing here. What I'm doing here is, and if you're wondering what I'm doing as well, I'm using a smudge brush to add shape to some of these highlights. But what I'm trying to do, what my goal is ultimately, is to convey a vision. Convey a vision. So the vision might be this robot, doing his thing, a little bit more clean and sharp. That's the reason I use overlay, because I can get my highlights, shadows. I can do so much things within one layer that it just frees me up. You know what I'm saying? And it makes my process a little bit easier because I've freed myself up with multiple different things. Okay, so we've got this cool thing, we've got lighting, we've got all that stuff. Now let's add some highlights. So we're gonna hit clipping mask one more time, and we could do a normal layer, we could do a screen, a linear dodge, and add. I like add, right? So because there's a sun in this image, there'll be a sun somewhere. I'm gonna go all the way down, pretty saturated, and we're just gonna add some edge light here, some I call it rim light. And it is called rim light because I am a photographer, so we're gonna add some rim light. And rim light's good. That might be a little bit too dark. We can go up with the hue saturation a little bit. There we go. And then we can cut in, like we was doing before, to make the rim light more prominent. Here, look, boom. You could say because the light wouldn't be able to reach here, we'll cut it off here like that. There we go. But yeah, rim light is massively important because rim light really helps with a lot of how light works in real life. Because quite often in real life, light will hit objects and create a rim. And we see it a lot on the sides of people's faces and stuff, and on the sides of objects, and it just is kind of like a very constant kind of like lighting form that we see. Now, as a 2D artist, it's part and parcel. You kind of want to learn how to kind of like light things three-dimensionally, but then you don't also want to know too much. I've noticed artistically, it's all about knowledge, but if you know it too much, it can restrict you from making decisions sometimes that might have needed to be made. Because sometimes, and this is even as a photographer, some images you might shoot, you might have to alter things sometimes because they look too realistic, that they don't look realistic. I know it's a very weird thing to say. Sometimes if you know too much about lighting, you know too much about certain things, you could not make a decision which would have made your image way better. And it could be a thing where you end up in regret because you didn't make a decision, or it's just not as good as, this young artist who doesn't know as much, but he had the guts to make decisions that were a little bit more innovative and a little bit more abstract, but they were good in the end. And sometimes those things can end up being like key components of like the concept. So you might you might have a guy come in, he makes a decision, lighting wise or structure wise, and then that ultimately ends up getting into the movie and becomes part of the script because he made a decision about something visually. And if you would have made it and you didn't restrict yourself, you could have kind of got that credit in the script and been that kind of person. So just keep that in mind, that there is levels and there's layers to this stuff. All right, I'm really digging this. So remember where we started? We started quite rough. We started with the robot being quite brown and quite pink, and it just wasn't the same. Now we've got a golden robot. We've got a little bit more detail. We've got kind of a little bit more cleaner rendering. We're moving forward in a good way. That's just me using the lasso tool. I use the lasso tool religiously, so I'll just use the lasso tool to fill shapes whenever I feel like it, like on God, because it's just an old kind of like Photoshop technique that used to be something that we did, we just used the lasso a lot more than a lot of this generation now. They don't seemingly really even use the lasso like we did. Okay, so I think we're at the final stages of this piece, to be fair. I might do some facial details. I always like to kind of mess around with stuff like that. Let's have a look and get like a medium brown. Just go in. This isn't one of my, you know what? This isn't one of my favorite mechas that I've made, I guess. It's decent though, but it's not one of my favorites at all. Something about the jaw I just don't like. But it's cool. It's cool. It's got redeeming qualities, I can't lie. There's some redeeming stuff about it. That's just me doing some manual lighting rendering myself. Just get this to kind of work out a little bit better up top. Okay, what I do think though, I think I could benefit from hitting that liquefy one more time and bringing like this in a little bit. I think I just don't like how big the jaw is. Like, for me, the jaw is just too big. Like, I'm kind of warming up to this a little bit more, but at the same time, it's like, let's have a look at it unedited. Boom. I prefer this now. I do. Yeah, I'll be real. I prefer this now. Okay. All right. So let's go on. Let's move on to FX and background, right? So we got some cool stuff going on in the foreground. We got my man in a BG. It's kind of blurry and that. We're gonna go in and we're gonna figure out this whole like situation of what we're putting in the background. I'm trying to say, what it is that's going on in this scene. So let's figure it out. Let's first of all, let's put a layer between them. We already have that. I'm gonna create some smoke real quick. Super basic smoke. No fly shit. Just super, super basic smoke, bro. And don't worry, because a lot of this stuff's gonna be blurry. Like, it's gonna be blurred out. So, and it's gonna be smudged out and stuff. And because it's a blender brush, look, I can smudge it within itself already, you know. So as I said, Procreate has some good blender brushes, man. It really does. Okay, so we got that. We can have, I like to always kind of do this. Some fire coming from the bottom, right? I'll see. Go in with the smudger lodge. Make the fire look like fire, you feel me? And by the way, I'm smudging with the same brush I painted with, not with the paint version, with the smudge tool version of it, but I'm using that same kind of brush head to create these effects. Same with the smoke. I'm going in with the smudge head of this brush, and I'm just making big shapes and then twisting and turning the brush in my hand to make it a little bit more dynamic. Okay, so there you go. We got fire, we got smoke, we got the mechs on the scene. Now let's throw in some effects. Let's throw in some flitters and stuff. So I just used this brush on a previous, because I was just doing a clothing design before this. So this brush is like, it creates like these debris speckles like you would see in like movies. And this is like a place where you could get tripped up because you try and make it realistic. Like you'd be like, oh, the speckles wouldn't be that big if the mechs are giant. We don't know how big the mechs are. I want the mechs to be giant, so I think we're gonna have to throw in some birds and stuff to kind of make the mechs look huge. I think you should get the more concentrated yellow ones at the bottom. And then after that, we go straight in and we just hit motion blur. Boom. Not much, but we motion blur the hell out of everything, especially the background aspects. Boom. Then we go top. Same again. We do a lot of this stuff again, but up top. It's starting to take shape now. Because it's up top, we don't motion blur those ones. In fact, we can. And then next, we've done all of that. So we've come a long way. I want to do real quick, see this layer with the smoke on and stuff. Now, it looks good, but we switch it to add, right? Now, that's too much. I said add. I've gone crazy. We leave it, but we're going to turn the opacity down a little bit. Simply because it was overlapping the background mech too much, making the background mech look kind of rubbed out. But then I do think that's a little bit too much. What I will do is I'll get a soft eraser in terms of, but this isn't even a soft eraser. This is the Kekai Katoki brush. Kekai Katoki used to be one of my favorite artists, and we'll just start erasing slightly some of that stuff. Cool. All right. Final stages, people. Almost there, you know. So we've got a few things that kind of need focus. So number one is this gun. I put it here for a reason, and I didn't put it here to be ignored. So we're going to make the gun a big focus of this final stage. I'm going to go in with a add layer. We're going to get a deep blue. Go in like this. Very simple. Then we can go in and start messing around with that. Contorting it, twisting it, making it into energy. Really making it into like an energy source that is kind of like, you know, that's conveyed to the audience as, yeah, this is powerful, right? And I got whole brush packs for this, but I'm choosing to do it this way, just because I want to show people like there's a lot of ways to do things, and Don't get caught up on thinking like there's only one way or two ways to do things. There's loads of ways to do things. If you want to create energy, put it down and smudge the hell out of it, and you can create some really cool energy. Okay? All right, so we've done that. We're gonna add a little bit more energy to these. Add a whole shiny, yeah, look, oof, 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 oof. You know what I'm saying? To that. I think we went a little bit too crazy over there. We'll go a little bit darker. Boom. Okay, look, we're in action. So from what we had before, we've come so far in terms of like taking this into being a piece of concept art, right? Now, what I will say is we need to add, for me, some final highlights. So, and you can do them, it's metal, so you can do it easy. Sorry, I just got an email. He's just checking that. Okay, so we're basically done with all the highlights now. All right. So look, guys, we've come from very much a stagnant image at the start, something that's kind of brimming with energy at the end of the process. It's crazy how far the image can come just by giving it, an extra 30 minutes or something. It's interesting how much a little bit of work can change a piece. That's all I'll really say on this. There's still a few things I'd like to kind of work on and go in on, but I'm not obsessed with it enough to really do that. This is more to show you guys how to create something cool really easily. I think there's a few final things I'd like to show you guys that I like to do quite often with my speed painting. So, firstly, big one right here, make an overlay layer over the entire image. And one thing I love to do is get a soft brush, make it dark, and just add shadows around the edges. I just really love to kind of add a vignette, because it gives focus to here, which is the focal point. Now, one more thing I like to do is do a subtle highlight of the middle. Subtle, just to make the eyes more attached to the middle. That might not be subtle enough for me. I need more subtle than that. There we go. Let's have a look. Yeah, that's good. And then last thing I like to do is go here, copy canvas, right here, boom, paste. Once that's done, sometimes I like to tweak the perspective a little bit. Sometimes I really like to do that. And it's cool when you do that, you know what I'm saying? It adds a lot. It adds like more massiveness to the image, right? But I like to also duplicate that version of the image and do a sharpen. real quick. And what a sharpen will do is it will take the image to looking a little bit more like realistic, a little bit more rendered and realistic. And then on top of that, what I like to do is any areas that have like big sections of lighting, I like to kind of like do a soft touch in that area. So right here is the color. Sorry, my dog's just playing with its toy if you heard that in the background. Right here, we got that deep blue. I like to kind of just add a little bit of that into the areas where it would be kind of like conceptually. All right, and then final thing, big final. And this is one that I use a lot. I use this so much. Wasn't gonna use it here, but it wouldn't be one of my pieces of concept art if I didn't do it. So I'm gonna go right here. Go canvas, copy canvas, paste straight into chromatic aberration. Now, chromatic aberration is one of my favorite effects because it has a 3D fringe around everything. Now, there's two options. There's displace and there's perspective, right? Displace, perspective. Now, you can use it any way you want. What displace does, displace moves the chromatic aberration down or like wherever you displace it to be, like so, right? So if I want it to be like a little bit like that, I can leave it like that. If I want it to be more up here, I prefer displace most of the time because it's a little bit more subtle, right? You have to look for it. Now, go back. If we do it again, chromatic aberration, perspective. Now, perspective, it just happens on its own. And it kind of like just does it from the perspective lines. So you can move this to the middle and then you could do it. So the aberration would be everywhere but here, right? So if you want to do like a shot of somebody getting blasted by energy, you could go boom, and the aberration would be like, okay, the face isn't really affected, but everything else is, right? So that's pretty cool. And I haven't really played with that too much, but I've used it from time to time. Today, I think we will go with perspective, and we're going to do a little bit. We're not going to go crazy. I think we'll go 10%. That might even be too much. Maybe we go back to 8. Cool. And I think that's it. I think that's the image done for me. I think that's everything I wanted to do with this, and I think I'm very happy about it. So I'm going to put my logo on it, and I'm going to, get ready to post it on Instagram with a link in my bio to this tutorial, maybe. But yeah, this was very fun. I really enjoyed this process, and I hope you guys learned something. I hope you guys kind of like got a newfound love for digital painting, and you want to kind of like go out and do some yourself. I hope you want to just make some stuff yourself as well. Today, I hope you take this as my logo is backwards and it's stressing me out. There we go. But I hope you take this as, something of a good lesson, and you go forth and you make some concept art style work. You have some fun. Don't take it too seriously. Just learn something, practice, build up your skills. And, that's how we get good, by building up our skills and by practicing constantly and by looking at other people's work and being respectful and saying that is really good work. And, that's the only way we grow as a community. So please go forward, make some work, take pride in your work. Don't plagiarize other people's work and say that it's yours and all that kind of weird stuff, because I'll be real, guys, that is weird stuff. And just, let's keep it moving. Let's keep the art community pure, Let's have fun, and let's just make great stuff. But yeah, peace and love, peace and manners, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace. I might make some brush packs to go with this, but I'm not sure because time is of the essence, and I'm a very, very, very busy cat. So, it all comes down to if I have time in between client works. I've got to go back and do some client work right now. But yo, guys, thank you for watching. Peace.